Some stories don't need words. They speak through emotions, through silence, through moments. Here, every frame is a story. Every pause is a message. Welcome to Tales Beyond Words, where silence speaks and feelings tell the tale. The clock struck 8:45 p.m. The garage was quiet now. Tools lay scattered on the greasy floor, their metallic gleam dulled under the flickering fluorescent lights. Danish, a 26-year-old mechanic with worn hands and a heart far too generous for his own good, was wiping sweat off his forehead with a tattered cloth. It had been a long day. His dinner, packed lovingly by his younger sister, sat untouched on the dusty counter. He had promised her he'd eat on time, but promises had become a luxury, like comfort, like sleep. Just as he reached for the food, a loud honk echoed from outside the garage. Startled, Danish stepped out and saw a silver BMW at the edge of the road. The car's hood was open, and steam billowed into the chilly night air. A woman in a white coat stood beside it, frantically waving. Danish looked at the time. Almost 9 p.m. He sighed, his stomach growled, but he couldn't ignore someone in need, especially not at this hour. He jogged over. "Assalamu alaikum, madam, engine trouble?" he asked politely. The woman turned toward him, relief washing over her worried face. "Yes, I think something's wrong. The car just stopped and I don't know what to do. My phone's dead and I'm not from around here." She looked visibly tired and shaken. Danish nodded with understanding. "No worries, let me take a look." She stepped aside. Danish quickly inspected the engine, his fingers dancing through wires and pipes with the ease of someone who knew machines better than people. Within minutes, he found the issue: a burst radiator hose. "It'll need a replacement. I don't have the part right now, but I can patch it up temporarily so you can at least drive home." "Really, you'd do that now?" she asked, surprised. He smiled. "Madam, helping someone in trouble is never about the time, it's about the intention." For the next 45 minutes, Danish worked in silence under the dim light of his phone's torch. His fingers were numb, and hunger gnawed at his belly, but he didn't stop. The woman, now seated on a rock nearby, watched him curiously. His clothes were stained, his hands blackened with grease. But there was a strange elegance in the way he worked. Focused, honest, kind. "You do this every day?" she finally asked. He chuckled. "Every day, and sometimes nights too. But East, don't you ever get tired?" "Of what, helping people?" "No," he replied with a shrug. "Being tired is part of the job, but I'd rather be tired and helpful than comfortable and careless." Her gaze softened. No one had ever said something like that to her before. When he finally closed the hood and wiped his hands, she stood up quickly. "Thank you, I don't even know your name." "Danish," he replied, "just Danish, and you?" She hesitated for a second. "Ayla." "Well, Ayla Sahiba, your car should be good for the night, but please have it properly fixed tomorrow." She nodded. "I will. How much do I owe?"
You?
Danish shook his head. "Nothing." "What? But you spent an hour here. Please, I insist." "No," he said firmly but politely. "You were in trouble. Helping you was not a transaction." Ayla was stunned. She had never met someone who didn't immediately chase money after helping. At that moment, her driver finally arrived in another car. She gave Danish one last look, half curious, half touched. "Thank you again," she said, stepping into the vehicle. As the car drove away, Danish stood in silence, finally turning back to his cold dinner. The next morning, in a brightly lit office across town, Ayla sat across a mahogany desk, signing papers. The man in front of her wore a stiff smile. "Congratulations, Miss Ayla. You're officially the new owner of Hassan Auto Works." She nodded absent-mindedly. Her thoughts were still stuck on the night before, on Danish, on his hands, his words. When she had come from abroad to invest in a chain of workshops left behind by her late father, she had assumed the job would be about numbers and titles. But now, it felt different, more personal. "What about the staff?" she asked. "They don't know yet. We'll inform them this afternoon. Would you like to visit one of the garages today?" "Yes," she replied instantly. "Take me to the workshop in Gulshan Chowk." "Gulshan? That one's the oldest and poorest branch. Why not the one in Clifton?" She smiled faintly. "No, Gulshan. Back at the garage." Danish arrived early, as always. He had barely slept. He was hungry again, but he had no money left for breakfast. Still, he cleaned the workshop, arranged the tools, and got to work on an old Toyota waiting since last week. Around noon, a black SUV pulled up. The staff, confused and nervous, watched as Ayla stepped out. Dressed differently now, in simple jeans and a kurta, their manager rushed over. "Ma'am, this is an unexpected visit." "I know," she said gently. "I just wanted to meet the team." Danish looked up from the car and froze. Ayla smiled when their eyes met. "You?" he said, surprised. "Yes," she replied, walking up to him. "And you're the one who refused payment last night." He scratched his head, slightly embarrassed. I didn't know you were someone important." She laughed. "That's the thing, Danish. You treated me with kindness when you thought I was no one." There was a long pause. Then the manager stepped forward awkwardly. "Danish, this is Miss Ayla, the new owner of all our garages." The words hit like thunder. Danish looked at her, stunned, and she looked back with something unspoken in her eyes. Gratitude, admiration, and something else. Danish stood frozen, the wrench still in his hand. His eyes met Ayla's, and for the first time in years he felt truly seen. Not as a mechanic, not as a poor man, but as a human being. He quickly wiped his hands on his already stained trousers and bowed his head slightly. "Ma'am, if I'd known, I would have—" She interrupted him gently. "Done exactly what you did, and that's why I'm here." The other staff watched, bewildered. No one could understand why the new owner had chosen to talk directly to a junior mechanic. But Ayla didn't care for appearances. She cared for truth, and she had seen it in Danish the night before. She turned to the manager. "Can I have a word with your team alone?" The manager hesitated, then nodded and motioned the rest of the crew to gather. Ayla stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "This garage was my father's legacy. He believed in hard work, honesty, and respect for every worker. Whether a manager or a sweeper, I've come to see if that legacy still lives here." She paused, her eyes scanning the room. "And yesterday I found it, not in a report, not in a suit, but in the grease-covered hands of a man who helped a stranger without asking for anything in return." She turned to Danish again. "Would you be willing to help me bring that same spirit back to all our workshops?" Danish was stunned. "Me? I'm just a mechanic." "No," she said with a smile. "You're the mechanic." The garage erupted into soft claps and murmurs. Some watched in awe, others in disbelief. Danish felt overwhelmed. His whole life had been a battle. Poverty, rejection, and endless struggle. No one had ever noticed him for who he truly was. "Ma'am, I don't know how to manage things. I barely finished school." Ayla's voice turned gentle. "Leadership isn't about degrees, Danish. It's about heart. And you've already passed the test most people fail." Weeks passed. Under Ayla's guidance and Danish's quiet dedication, the Gulshan garage started changing. New tools arrived. The office was renovated. Lunch was arranged for all staff. The team grew more confident. Customers began to return. But what surprised everyone most was how Ayla treated Danish. She didn't just talk to him, she listened. They often discussed workshop improvements, better service plans, and even employee welfare. Slowly, something else began to grow. Something tender, silent, and unspoken. Danish would steal glances at her when she wasn't looking. And sometimes, Ayla would smile at his awkward attempts to sound professional. One evening after a long day, Ayla asked him to sit for tea. "Danish, can I ask you something personal?" He nodded. "Why did you help me that night, without even knowing who I was?" He looked down for a moment before replying. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone and helpless, and I believe if I can make someone's journey easier, even
One
for...
night,
then maybe I'm not as useless as the world says I am." Ayla's eyes welled up, but she quickly blinked the tears away. "You're not useless, Danish, you're rare." Their hands brushed briefly as he passed her the cup of tea. Both felt it, but neither spoke. A month later, the central head office invited Danish to speak at a company-wide meeting. For a man who had never used a microphone before, it was terrifying. But Ayla stood beside him, quietly encouraging. When he stepped up, he took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. "I'm not a manager. I'm not rich. I don't even own a car. But what I do have is respect for hard work and love for what I do. If every mechanic treats every vehicle like it belongs to their own sister or mother, then no customer will ever leave unhappy. The room applauded. Even the senior board members nodded in approval. After the meeting, Ayla introduced him to her investors and partners, proudly, like family. One quiet night. A few days later, Ayla visited the workshop alone. It was closing time. Danish was locking up. "Everything okay, Ayla Saiba?" he asked, smiling as he saw her. She looked nervous. "I wanted to tell you something. Personal." He straightened up. "Yes?" She stepped closer. "People often say the rich can't understand the poor, but I think hearts understand hearts. And mine, it understands yours." His breath caught in his throat. "I don't care about your past, Danish. I care about your character, your kindness, and the way you made me feel safe that night, without even knowing me." He couldn't believe what he was hearing. I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Then don't," she smiled. "Just let me walk this journey with you." In that quiet garage, surrounded by oil stains and the scent of metal, two very different worlds came together. Not through wealth, not through power, but through humanity. Epilogue. 1 year later. Danish now manages 4 workshops. Under Ayla's mentorship, he completed a diploma in business. Employees across the city know his name, not as a boss, but as a brother. He and Ayla never flaunted their bond, but everyone could see the spark, the trust, the affection, the quiet loyalty. One morning, the workers found a small white board hung in the office. It read, "Success isn't found in titles or money. It's found in the hearts we touch when we choose kindness over convenience." Danish and Ayla. And beneath it, in smaller writing, "He skipped dinner that night and found a lifetime instead."